They laughed with you. They complimented you. They said you were like family. But something inside you, deep, ancient, unshakable, whispered, "This is a mask." And the moment you heard it, you knew. You're not just any sign. You're a Scorpio. And when someone dares to lie to a Scorpio, they don't just lose trust. They awaken a storm. Welcome, soul travelers. This is the path to Buddhist wisdom, where we merge ancient Zodiac insight with spiritual clarity. Today, we unravel a truth that most are afraid to face. What happens when a two-faced person crosses paths with a Scorpio? Scorpio, the Scorpio soul, built for truth, born from fire. Scorpio is not your average water sign. Yes, they feel. Yes, they empathize. But unlike other emotional signs, Scorpio doesn't dissolve under pressure. They crystallize. Ruled by Pluto, lord of death and rebirth, and Mars, the ancient god of war, Scorpio is both the battlefield and the bomb. They don't react casually. They don't let it slide. They don't smile just to keep the peace. When you lie to a Scorpio, when you show one face and speak from another, you are not offending their mind. You are violating their soul contract with truth. And that, my friends, is something they never let go of. Scorpion betrayal isn't just painful for Scorpio. It's spiritual violence. Here's the secret no one tells you. Scorpio doesn't get hurt because they're sensitive. They get hurt because they gave you a piece of their soul and you spat on it. Loyalty for a Scorpio is not a game. It is sacred. So when betrayal arrives, they don't just feel sadness. They feel scorched. The fire that awakens in them is not about revenge. It's about restoration of truth. In Buddhist terms, it is karma awakening through the vehicle of soul awareness. Scorpio doesn't shout. They remember. They observe. They burn clean. And when they're done, they don't return to who they were. They become someone stronger, colder, clearer. Fire from wound to weapon. The Scorpio transformation. Think about it like this. Some signs walk away from betrayal. Scorpio walks through it, barefoot, bleeding, eyes wide open. And on the other side, they don't come out with bitterness. They come out with blueprints. For who they'll never let in again. For what they'll never tolerate again. And for how their silence will speak louder than any accusation. Scorpio's silence isn't avoidance. It's sacred precision. While the world shouts to be heard, Scorpio says nothing. And in that silence, the truth collapses on itself. Eagle Scorpio doesn't react. They ascend. Here's the deeper wisdom. Scorpio doesn't seek to punish those who lie to them. They don't waste time trying to explain why it hurt. They don't make dramatic exits. They vanish. Not because they're weak, but because they've seen enough to know the connection was never real. Their presence is a gift. Their withdrawal is a message. And to the one who betrayed them, that message sounds like this. You were seen. You were weighed. You were not real. And I am done giving my light to shadows. Person in lotus position of Buddhist reflection, the karma of masks. In Buddhist teachings, we speak of Maya, illusion, the false self, the lie we were to survive. But when illusion harms others, it becomes a karmic burden. Scorpio doesn't carry that burden for you. They return it, silently, without permission. And that return is often the most painful thing a two-faced person will ever experience. Because it doesn't come with blame. It comes with absence. And that absence echoes louder than any confrontation ever could. Cross swords, so what happens when you betray a Scorpio? You don't just lose access to their heart. You lose access to their energetic field. You are cut off from the deepest well of loyalty you will ever encounter. They may never say it aloud, but the judgment is final. Scorpio doesn't burn bridges in anger. They burn them in honor. And in that fire, they rise. Direct hit, your voice matters. Comment below. Have you ever felt the energy of a lie before the truth came out? Have you ever chosen silence over revenge and felt the power in it? Brain drop a fire if this message resonates. Let's start a fire in the comments that no two-faced mask can survive. Backhand index pointing right coming next. Part 2. The Scorpio Soul Radar. How they know before you lie. Part 2. The Scorpio Soul Radar. How they know before you lie. You thought you were clever. You said all the right words. You smiled at the perfect moment. But something in the air shifted, and you didn't notice. The Scorpio did. They didn't interrupt. They didn't accuse. They didn't even flinch. But they felt it, like thunder beneath a calm sea. Not because they were watching your lips, but because their soul was listening to your spirit. Scorpios don't read people. They read energy. Let's get this straight. Scorpio isn't out here guessing. They don't rely on rumors. They don't gossip. They feel vibration, where others see body language. Scorpio sees through the veil. They feel the moment your words stop matching your frequency. They hear the tremor behind your "I'm fine." They catch the energetic hesitation before the betrayal is even conscious. This isn't witchcraft. It's spiritual intelligence, cultivated through centuries of reincarnated heartbreak. Scorpios come into this life with psychic instincts tuned for survival. Not just physical survival, but emotional, karmic, and soul-level protection. Brain emotional intelligence passed down through shadow. Scorpios weren't born knowing how to detect a lie. They were trained by life to recognize it, through betrayal, abandonment, and pain. Every lie they've ever survived sharpened their radar. Every friend who turned out to be a fraud gave them a new spiritual instrument. And now, they hear dishonesty in the space between words. It's not paranoia, it's precision. Because let me tell you something, once a Scorpio has been lied to once, they will never unhear the sound of falsehood again. Man detective, what happens when their radar goes off? They don't panic. They don't shout. They get quiet. They lean back. They become still. Their smile fades, not in anger, but in observation. They begin recording, emotionally, spiritually, sometimes even subconsciously. And the more you speak, the more they gather. The Scorpio soul radar doesn't just detect lies. It stores them. Because Scorpio doesn't always strike immediately. They let the illusion grow. So when it breaks completely. DNA, a true Scorpio story, the smile that gave it away. I once interviewed a Scorpio healer from Arizona. She told me something I'll never forget. He didn't confess. He didn't act different. But something about the way he said, "I love you," felt like it was rehearsed. And in that moment, I felt it. The script had replaced the soul. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She sat in meditation for 2 weeks. And by the third, the lie fell out of his mouth like a rotten tooth, unprovoked. Scorpios don't hunt liars. They make space for the lie to reveal itself. Candle the Buddhist mirror. Stillness is a sacred weapon. Buddha taught that clarity arises in stillness. Scorpio carries this principle instinctively. They don't need conflict to get the truth. They don't need chaos. They sit. They listen. They feel. And when the falseness becomes too loud to ignore, they remove themselves. Not to punish, but to protect. They understand what many forget. When energy shifts, truth is already on the move. Snake what they hear when you're lying. You say, "I'd never betray you." They feel, "I've already chosen myself over your trust." You say, "You're overthinking." They feel, "You're getting too close to the truth." You say, "I love you." They feel, "You love the idea of me, not me." Scorpios don't hear words. They hear intention. And when your intention isn't clean, their entire being retracts like a tide pulling back before the storm. Crossed swords, why Scorpio doesn't confront you, they observe you. To the deceiver, Scorpio's silence feels like a void. But to the Scorpio, that silence is sacred data collection. They are tracking the change in your eyes, the drop in your energy, the micro delays in your speech, the moments when the room goes cold for no reason. By the time you lie twice, they've already felt it 5 times. And when the moment of truth arrives, you won't need to confess. They'll already be gone. Person in lotus position, final reflection, the sacred power of knowing. In Buddhism, there is a quiet form of wisdom called prajna, intuitive knowing. It doesn't come from study. It comes from deep, silent seeing. Scorpio embodies this. They don't ask for receipts. They don't demand evidence. They know. And that knowing is what protects them, not from pain, but from being pulled into relationships not rooted in truth. Scorpio's gift is not revenge. It is discernment. And that gift saves them every time. Direct hit comment below. Have you ever just known someone wasn't being real? Did your silence become your greatest weapon? Speech balloon, share your Scorpio moment in the comments. Let's build a library of truth together. Part 3. Betrayal is an initiation. How Scorpio is forged in fire. Some signs cry after betrayal. Some scream. Some chase after closure. But Scorpio? Scorpio walks barefoot into the fire and comes out reborn. This is not a dramatic metaphor. This is the Scorpio path. Ancient, karmic, sacred. When you betray a Scorpio, you don't just hurt them. You ignite them. And in that blaze, something extraordinary happens. The self they were dies, and a new self, forged in betrayal, rises from the ashes. Fire pain is not the end. It's the ritual. Most people think betrayal is a wound. But to a Scorpio, it's a portal. It cracks open everything fake. It exposes attachments they didn't even know they had. And once the truth explodes, there is no going back. They don't numb it. They don't sugarcoat it. Scorpio lets the pain burn through every illusion, every story, every false identity. Because only then can they see who they really are, beneath the roles, beneath the trust, beneath the dream. In Buddhism, we call this dukkha, the suffering that reveals impermanence. Scorpio doesn't run from this truth. They become it. Scorpion real talk. Scorpio was never meant to live easy lives. This is the secret of the 8th house, Scorpio's astrological domain. It rules death, rebirth, power, secrets, transformation. What does that mean? It means Scorpio souls don't incarnate for comfort. They incarnate to evolve through intensity. Every heartbreak, a trigger for awakening. Every betrayal, a gateway to the next version of themselves. Every false friend, a karmic mirror that reveals where they gave too much to the wrong energy. So when someone lies, cheats, or manipulates a Scorpio, they are not breaking a person. They are activating a sacred cycle. Dragon, the myth of the phoenix, isn't just a symbol. It's a Scorpio blueprint. In many ancient cultures, the phoenix is born in fire. It doesn't escape it. It doesn't avoid it. It builds its nest and dies in it. Only through total combustion does the phoenix rise in a form more powerful, pure, and wise. Scorpio lives this cycle over and over again, burned by betrayal, reduced to emotional ash, sitting in the dark with nothing but the sound of their own breath, rebuilding not their mask, but their essence. This is not about recovery. This is about reinvention. And every Scorpio who's ever been lied to knows this truth. That pain didn't end me. It introduced me to me. Person in lotus position, the Buddhist mirror. Fire as purification, not punishment. In Buddhist tradition, fire is not just destruction. It is cleansing. There's a saying, only through the fire can gold reveal itself. Scorpio doesn't fear fire. They walk into it willingly, not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand that transformation requires loss. To lose the lie, the illusion, the naive version of themselves, is not defeat. It is sacred subtraction, a spiritual clearing. Scorpio knows what survives the fire is real. What doesn't was never meant to last. Whole after the betrayal, Scorpio's descent isn't depression. It's initiation. Let me be clear. Scorpio's low moments after betrayal are not weakness. They are depth work. They withdraw. They cut off contact. They isolate. But this isn't about shutting down. This is about soul recalibration. They're not hiding from the world. They're rebuilding their inner temple, brick by brick, memory by memory, scar by sacred scar. And when they re-emerge, they don't just bounce back. They return as a different creature entirely. Eagle example, the Scorpio artist who painted her way through betrayal. A Scorpio woman I knew in San Francisco was once betrayed by her business partner and best friend, someone she considered family. Instead of confronting them, she disappeared, cut contact, moved cities, changed everything. For a year, she said nothing. But during that year, she painted. Not portraits, not landscapes, but visions. Phoenixes, torn hearts, temples on fire, silent eyes. By the time her first gallery opened, people were in tears. The betrayal had become beauty. The lie had become art. The grief had become grace. That's what Scorpio does. They don't stay broken. They create something eternal from the ruins. Lock what the world gets wrong about Scorpio vengeance. People love to say Scorpio is vengeful. But here's the truth. Scorpio's real revenge is not hurting you back. It's rising so high that you can no longer reach their frequency. They don't slash your tires. They outgrow your dimension. They don't waste their energy proving you wrong. They channel that energy into transformation so complete, you no longer even recognize the person you once deceived. That is the Scorpio way. Man in lotus position, final reflection. Betrayal is the fire, but Scorpio is the flame. To the Scorpio soul, betrayal is not a death sentence. It is a soul awakening. They lose the illusion. They gain vision. They lose the relationship. They reclaim self-respect. They lose their naivety. They rise with clarity, sovereignty, and fire. Scorpio doesn't run from what hurts. They walk into it, not to be destroyed, but to become unstoppable. Direct hit call to comment. Have you ever walked through betrayal and come out stronger? What did your fire teach you about who you really are? Speech balloon, share your Phoenix moment below. Your story might be the torch someone else needs to rise. Part 4. The Phoenix rises. Why Scorpios don't heal, they transform. Some people break, then slowly rebuild themselves. Others pretend they were never broken. But Scorpio, they burn, and they rise, not as a better version of who they were, but as someone entirely new. This is what the world misunderstands most about Scorpio. They don't go through pain to heal. They go through pain to transform. Because Scorpio doesn't want to get back to who they were. They want to become who they were always destined to be. Scorpio, the myth of healing doesn't apply to Scorpio. In most spiritual teachings, people talk about healing like this. Go slow, be gentle, return to yourself. But that doesn't work for Scorpio. Why? Because the Scorpio self is not static. It's evolutionary. When betrayal hits, they don't just need comfort. They need rebirth. They don't ask, how do I move on? They ask, who am I now that this fire has touched me? Fire, what it actually means to be the Phoenix. The Phoenix, Scorpio's ultimate archetype, is not just a symbol of rebirth. It is a sacred contract. According to myth, the Phoenix builds its own funeral pyre. It knows the end is near, and instead of fearing it, it steps inside. Fire, it chooses death. Fire, it allows the fire to take everything. Fire, it trusts that something deeper will survive. And that's exactly what Scorpio does. After betrayal, heartbreak, loss, deception, they do not just recover. They self-immolate emotionally, willingly entering a period of death. Death of old trust, death of former identity, death of outdated beliefs. Only after total destruction does something new emerge. Person in lotus position, Buddhist mirror, the fire path of no self. In Buddhism, there is a teaching called anatta, no fixed self. We are not static beings. We are rivers, not stones. And true awakening requires the death of the ego. Scorpio knows this instinctively. They don't cling to how things used to be. They don't need to return to normal. They let the false self burn, because they understand something powerful. The soul cannot evolve if it refuses to release the old armor. Dove, real-life example. A Scorpio who walked into the fire. A Scorpio man I knew, a poet, was betrayed by both his best friend and partner. They started a secret relationship behind his back. When he found out, he didn't confront them. He didn't post about it. He vanished. For 6 months, no one heard from him. Then, without warning, he returned. New name, new voice, new purpose. He had written a book. He'd started a healing circle for men dealing with betrayal. He was no longer the same person. The fire didn't destroy me, he said. It exposed the parts of me that were never real. I'm grateful to be gone. That is Scorpio transformation, not recovery. Ascension. Snake Scorpio doesn't want the past back. They want what's real. After the fire, people often come crawling back. They apologize. They say they've changed. They beg to return to how things used to be. But Scorpio doesn't go backward. Once they've seen the truth, they can't unsee it. Once they've evolved, they won't shrink to fit old spaces. Once they've shed the mask, they refuse to wear it again. They don't rebuild broken bridges. They build new cities. And if you try to pull them back, they won't argue. They'll vanish again, but this time with zero emotion left for you. Man in lotus position, Scorpio's post-fire self, clarity in human form. When Scorpio rises, they come back sharper. Sharper boundaries, sharper intuition, sharper alignment. They don't laugh at fake jokes anymore. They don't explain their silence. They don't tolerate even a whisper of misalignment. They've learned the price of giving energy to what isn't real. And now, they give only to what's sacred. That includes relationships with integrity, solitude with peace, purpose over validation. This isn't coldness. It's clarity. Locked to be reborn, Scorpio must let it all die. This is where most people fail to follow Scorpio. They want healing without loss. They want rebirth without death. But Scorpio knows that's not how transformation works. To become new, you must let the old version of yourself completely die. That means letting go of the dream, letting go of the identity, letting go of even your own role in the betrayal. And Scorpio does it with terrifying honesty. That's why they rise stronger than any other sign, because they don't carry dead weight into their next chapter. Direct hit final reflection. Scorpio isn't about healing. It's about alchemy. Healing is about repair. Scorpio is about transmutation. They don't just fix what was broken. They forge something sacred from the wreckage. They don't seek justice. They become the balance. They don't move on. They move up. Every betrayal becomes a stepping stone. Every scar, a rune etched with wisdom. Every silence, a hymn of rebirth. Scorpio doesn't bounce back. They become flame. Speaking head call to comment. Have you ever chosen to let go of your old self instead of trying to fix things? Did pain ever become your doorway to power? Speech balloon drop a fire if this resonates, and share how you transformed through fire. Part 5. Stories from the Ashes. Real tales of Scorpio betrayal and resurrection. You never really understand the power of Scorpio until you betray one. And just when you think they're gone forever, they return, not to make peace, but to rise. We've talked about the fire. We've talked about the silence. Now let's walk into the real stories. The betrayals, the vanishing acts, the unbelievable rebirths. Because Scorpio doesn't just survive pain, they turn it into prophecy. Keycap 1 Julia Roberts, the smile that said nothing, but saw everything. Most people know her as America's sweetheart. But behind that smile is a classic Scorpio spirit. Intense, private, surgical with her choices. In the early 2000s, Julia was betrayed. Her then husband, actor Lyle Lovett, and her inner circle were caught in lies, both emotional and professional. But what did Julia do? She disappeared. No interviews, no public fight, no exposure, just silence, withdrawal, transformation. And when she came back, she won an Oscar. She reinvented her image. She built an unshakable legacy. "I'm just figuring it all out," she said quietly once. But Scorpio fans knew. She wasn't figuring it out. She was shedding her skin. Keycap 2, a Scorpio businessman. The betrayal that built a brand. Let me tell you a story from a client of mine. We'll call him Kane. Kane built a digital marketing startup with 2 friends. They laughed, worked, and trusted each other. Until one day, he checked the company account. The other 2 had drained it. Without warning, without explanation. He confronted no one. He packed up. He moved to another state. And he said nothing. For 18 months, people thought he disappeared. Then, he launched a new agency, alone. He refused investors, built everything from scratch. Within 2 years, he outsold his former partners tenfold. "I never needed revenge," he told me. "I needed distance, discipline, and the fire only betrayal gives you." That's Scorpio's code. No announcement, just ascension. Keycap 3 Scorpio's old tale, the monk and the snake. Let's go deeper now. Back to a Buddhist story told in Tibet for centuries. A monk once walked through a village and found a snake. Abused, mocked by children, burned by fire. The monk healed the snake's wounds and whispered, "You are sacred, but you've been too soft." Years later, he returned and saw no snake. He asked the village. One child said, "The snake? It disappeared. It doesn't slither here anymore. But sometimes, we see something golden moving in the trees." What happened? The snake didn't die. It transformed. It grew wings. It became a dragon. And it never came back. Scorpio isn't just that snake. They're the dragon rising in silence. No revenge. No explanation. Just a new altitude. Man in lotus position, the lesson in every story. What do all these stories have in common? The betrayal was real. The wound went deep. But Scorpio didn't beg, plead, or fight. They left. They evolved. They returned stronger, not to prove anything, but because they had become something else. Because Scorpio doesn't heal the way others do. They disappear into transformation. And when they rise, they don't carry the pain. They carry clarity. They don't need to say, "Look at me now," because the world can feel it. Direct hit final message. If you've been betrayed, humiliated, or left behind, you are not broken. You're in the beginning of your Phoenix story. You don't need revenge. You need the next version of yourself. The ashes are not your ending. They're your birthplace. Speech balloon comment below. Which story resonated with you most? Have you ever disappeared, only to return as someone no one expected? Drop a fire in the comments if you've ever risen in silence. Part 6. The Scorpio disappearance. Why silence is their most devastating power. There's no warning, no message, No final goodbye. One day, the Scorpio is just gone, and you don't even realize it, until the silence starts screaming. Scorpio, when a Scorpio vanishes, it's not by accident. Scorpio is a fixed sign, meaning loyal, constant, deep-rooted. So when they disappear, that is sacred warfare. They don't ghost to play games. They don't withdraw to be dramatic. They vanish because the soul contract has expired. And when a Scorpio soul says, enough, they don't slam the door. They evaporate, and their absence becomes the punishment you never expected. Muted speaker silence is not an escape. It's a weapon. You see, Scorpio's silence isn't emptiness. It's intention. Every word withheld is precision. Every message unsent is strategy. Every absence is a statement louder than rage could ever be. Why? Because Scorpio knows. Energy doesn't lie. Words often do. So when your energy shows deception, even if your words are sweet, they begin to cut you off. Not loudly, but completely. Not just from their time, from their emotional frequency, from their psychic intimacy, from their karmic bond. Hold the moment it happens. You might not even notice it right away. They'll still answer with polite nods. They'll still smile gently, but the depth is gone. What you once felt, that piercing soul-to-soul connection, is now replaced by a hollow neutrality. And then, like a shadow shifting with the moon, they vanish. No fight, no goodbye, just emptiness. You may call, text, reach out, and all you'll hear is your own voice echoing back. DNA real example. She never said goodbye, but she took everything with her. A man once wrote to me about a Scorpio woman he betrayed. He flirted behind her back, lied just a little, but he always thought she'd forgive him. She was quiet, soft-spoken, gentle, until one day, she stopped responding. Not coldly, just completely absent. He said, it was like she erased me from her universe, not with hatred, but with indifference so pure, it broke me more than rage ever could. That's the Scorpio cutoff. They don't end it with fire, they end it with void. And the void consumes everything fake. Person in lotus position, Buddhist mirror. Emptiness is not nothing. It's sacred space. In Buddhist teaching, sunyata means emptiness, but not in the Western sense. It's not a lack. It's a fertile silence, a return to purity, a space where illusion has been burned away. When Scorpio disappears, they're not escaping. They're cleansing. They're burning the energetic cords. They're clearing the karmic debt. They're making space for what is true, aligned, and sacred. In that silence, they don't just heal, they rebalance the soul field. Scorpion, why silence hurts more than words. Because in silence, you are left with only one thing, your own reflection. And if you betrayed a Scorpio, that reflection is distorted, painful, and unescapable. They won't explain. They won't argue. They don't need closure. Because they know, the one who betrayed never deserves the final word. Their silence becomes the mirror, and in it, you see not them, but your own dishonesty staring back. Candle the Scorpio truth. They don't disappear to punish you. They disappear to protect themselves. Scorpio gives deeply. When they love, they connect at the soul's root. But once that connection is violated, they retract all energy, all emotion, all psychic access, and they don't return, not because they hate you, but because returning would mean betraying themselves. That's something Scorpio never does twice. Man in lotus position, final reflection. Their absence is their revolution. When Scorpio vanishes from your life, they've already cried in silence. They've already faced their shadows. They've already held their own broken heart with sacred hands. So by the time they disappear, they are no longer looking back. They're walking through the next door, into the next version of themselves, into a life where lies can't reach them anymore. And the door? It locks from the other side. Direct hit comment below. Have you ever disappeared from someone's life without explanation? Was your silence misunderstood or sacred? Speech balloon drop a locked in the comments if you've ever used silence as a final act of power. Part 7. The lesson Scorpio learns from betrayal and why they never love the same way again. Yes, they can love again. Yes, they still feel everything. But no, it will never be like before. Because once a Scorpio has loved and been betrayed, they don't love recklessly, they love with armor. Scorpio learns fast and forever. Scorpio is not the kind of sign that repeats mistakes. One betrayal is enough. And when it happens, they don't just grieve the person. They grieve the version of themselves who believed so openly. who trusted so deeply, who loved so purely. That self dies, and in its place, something unshakable is born. Fire from romantic to relentless, the Scorpio aftershock. Before betrayal, Scorpio gives fully. They drown in you. They let their walls fall. They touch the divine through love. After betrayal, they love like a strategist. They measure energy before investing. They watch more than they speak. They keep parts of themselves unreachable because they now understand. Not every soul is worthy of my full access. Person in lotus position. Buddhist reflection. Attachment is the root of suffering. Buddha taught that suffering is born not from love, but from attachment to an illusion. Scorpio learns this the hard way. They once mistook intensity for truth. They once gave everything to someone who wore a mask. But after betrayal, Scorpio no longer loves illusions. They love reality. They love truth. They love what is consistent beneath the words. And if the energy doesn't match, they don't force it. They walk. Silently. Permanently. Scorpion real-life example. I could love again, but not with my eyes closed. A Scorpio woman once told me this after a brutal breakup. I didn't stop loving people. I stopped loving people who lie to themselves. That's what Scorpio learns. They don't hate love. They hate deception. So their new love becomes filtered. No more rescuing. No more ignoring red flags. No more hoping people grow into their potential. They love only what's aligned. And if it's not, they don't try to fix it. They let it go before it infects their peace. Broken heart, the scar that becomes a shield. When Scorpio loves after betrayal, they do it differently. They still feel with intensity. They still long with depth. But they no longer abandon themselves for another. They've learned, if I must betray myself to love you, then that love is not sacred. So they put up boundaries. Not walls, sacred thresholds. They don't block you to punish. They filter energy to protect their temple. You'll feel it when you love a Scorpio post-betrayal. They watch before they open. They test before they trust. And once you cross their line, there's no return. Candle Scorpio still believes in love, but on their terms. Make no mistake, Scorpio is still a lover. But now, they don't need love to feel whole. They don't chase intensity to feel alive. They don't sacrifice their intuition for affection. They've become spiritually sovereign. And that makes their love even more powerful. Because it comes from choice, not dependence. If a Scorpio loves you now, it's because they see truth in you, not fantasy. That kind of love, rare, fierce, unforgivingly honest. Man in lotus position. Final reflection. They love differently, not less. After betrayal, Scorpio doesn't shrink. They refine. Their heart becomes sharper, but not colder. Their soul becomes wiser, but not closed. Their love becomes rarer, but infinitely more real. I don't love the way I used to. A Scorpio once told me, I love better now, but I love fewer people. And that's the truth. Scorpio's love becomes an invitation, not an obligation. You either meet it with full presence, or you never even touch it. Direct hit comment below. Have you ever loved again after betrayal, but with new eyes? How did your love evolve after you were hurt? Speech balloon. Drop a red heart. Fire in the comments if your heart now has boundaries of gold. Part 8. Scorpio versus the world of masks. Why they refuse to tolerate fake energy anymore. The world says, play nice, keep the peace, smile even when it's fake. But Scorpio says, no, I'd rather stand alone in truth than be surrounded by lies that clap. Scorpio wasn't built for surface games. If there's one thing Scorpio can't stomach, it's pretending. Pretending to laugh when the energy is wrong. Pretending to agree when their soul is screaming. Pretending to get along when deception hangs in the air. They don't play that game. Why? Because Scorpio was not born to conform. They were born to pierce illusion. And in a world full of polite hypocrisy, that makes them dangerous and divine. Face without mouth. The world wears masks. Scorpio sees through them. From boardrooms to brunches, society is full of curated personas. The people pleaser who secretly envies you. The charming manipulator in spiritual clothing. The partner who says, I'm fine, but hides resentment under every syllable. Scorpio sees through all of it. They may not call it out, but they feel it instantly. Truth isn't what you say, a Scorpio once told me. It's what your energy betrays. And the moment they sense your words don't match your vibration, they withdraw, not in judgment, but in spiritual preservation. Person in lotus position, Buddhist reflection. The mask is the first illusion to drop. In Buddhism, one of the greatest teachings is non-attachment to identity. The idea is simple. You are not your name, not your status, not your mask. But most people cling to those masks like lifeboats. Scorpio doesn't. They remove masks from others, yes, but first from themselves. And that's what makes them intolerant of fake energy. They've already faced their own shadow. So when someone shows up wearing a mask, Scorpio isn't offended. They're just uninterested. Scorpion, a real story. She called me cold because I didn't laugh at her lie. A Scorpio man once told me this. My co-worker made a cruel joke. Everyone laughed politely. I didn't. She called me cold. I call that integrity. This is the reality of being a Scorpio in a fake world. If you don't laugh with the crowd, you're difficult. If you don't pretend everything is fine, you're too intense. If you hold silence when everyone else is lying, you're scary. But Scorpio doesn't care about labels. They care about truth, even if they have to walk alone to protect it. Candle the silent war. Scorpio versus performance culture. Scorpio walks through the world like a truth detector in a world full of special effects. They're not impressed by performative kindness, hollow affirmations, public declarations that hide private agendas. They're not looking for performance. They're looking for presence. If they sense your smile as a strategy, not sincerity, they will say nothing, but they will never trust you again. DNA. Why Scorpio prefers solitude over shallow connection. You may wonder, why are Scorpios so private? It's not because they fear vulnerability. It's because they know its value. And in a world that trades emotions like currency, Scorpio protects their energy like a monk guards a sacred scroll. They'd rather eat alone than dine with fakes. They'd rather be misunderstood than misaligned. They'd rather sit in silence than entertain pretense. This isn't bitterness. It's soul hygiene. Man in lotus position. Final reflection. Scorpio's intolerance for fake energy is a spiritual stand. In a world where masks are praised and illusions celebrated, Scorpio chooses truth over trend. They're not here to fit in. They're here to cleanse the room simply by existing in it. Their presence is confrontational, not because they try to be, but because their refusal to perform triggers those who do. And that's okay, because Scorpio doesn't seek popularity. They seek alignment. They don't fear being alone. They fear being surrounded by people who don't even know who they are. I'd rather be hated for my truth, Scorpio whispers, than praised for a mask I never agreed to wear. Direct hit comment below. Have you ever been called cold or too serious just because you refuse to be fake? Speech balloon. Drop a sunglasses in the comments if you've ever walked away from shallow vibes with no regrets. Part 9. Alchemy of pain. How Scorpio turns emotional poison into power. Pain doesn't break a Scorpio. It refines them. Every heartbreak becomes a spell. Every betrayal becomes a flame. Every loss becomes fuel. Because Scorpio was never meant to avoid pain. They were born to transform it. Scorpio, the sign of sacred alchemy. Among all 12 zodiac signs, Scorpio is the only one that rules death and rebirth. Not just physical death, but the death of illusion, the death of ego, the death of false connection. And from those ruins, Scorpio performs alchemy. They take grief and sculpt poetry. They take rage and shape boundaries. They take betrayal and birth clarity. Where others collapse, Scorpio evolves. Snake. What others fear, Scorpio walks into. When pain arrives, most people run. They distract. They numb. They deny. But Scorpio, they descend into the wound, into the memory, into the very center of what others refuse to face. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because they know there is something sacred hidden inside what hurts, and they won't leave until they retrieve it. Test tube. Emotional alchemy. Turning poison into power. In ancient alchemy, base metals were said to be turned into gold, but the real gold was the soul, transformed by fire. Scorpio's heart is a cauldron. Everything that enters is burned, tested, reduced to essence. Love turns to loyalty. Betrayal turns to discernment. Grief turns to wisdom. It's not that Scorpio forgets. They just transmute. What tried to kill them becomes the very force they rise on. Person in lotus position. Buddhist parallel. From dukkha to dharma. In Buddhism, dukkha means suffering, but dharma is the truth that liberates. Between them lies the path of transformation. Scorpio walks that path daily. They don't just survive pain. They extract truth from it. They sit with their shadows. They breathe into the ache. And slowly, that ache becomes awakening. While others avoid their wounds, Scorpio listens to theirs. And the wound speaks. Performing art's real example. The Scorpio musician who turned betrayal into sound. There's a Scorpio artist, we'll call her Alira. Her fiancé cheated. Her label dropped her. She lost everything. But she didn't post online. She didn't lash out. She disappeared into her art. 1 year later, she released an album. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was hauntingly honest. A sonic map of a soul transfigured by pain. The world called it genius. But Scorpios knew it was alchemy. I didn't write these songs to hurt him, she said. I wrote them to remember who I am. Candle Scorpio doesn't forgive easily, but they transform always. It's true, Scorpio may never forget what you did, but they will no longer carry it the same way. They don't recycle rage. They refine it. What once burned now glows. What once haunted now guides. What once wounded now whispers. You have survived. Now build. Their pain becomes their practice. Their loss becomes their law. Man in lotus position, final reflection. Scorpio is the fire that transforms, not destroys. Scorpio doesn't use pain to punish. They use pain to purify. Every betrayal becomes a vow. Every silence becomes a spell. Every scar becomes scripture, a sacred reminder of their truth. They don't seek revenge, because becoming more of who they are is the greatest revolution of all. You hurt me, Scorpio says, but I am the one who changed. And that change is my power. Direct hit comment below. Have you ever turned pain into purpose? Did your darkest moment become your deepest transformation? Speech balloon drop, an alchemy symbol, or fire if you've ever turned heartbreak into strength. The sacred summary, Scorpio wisdom and the path to soul sovereignty. They thought betrayal would break you. They thought silence would bury you. They thought your love would make you weak. But you were Scorpio, and everything they used against you became the force you rose with. Scorpio, the journey we just took. Let's remember what you've walked through. You sensed the lie before it was spoken. You sat in silence while the mask fell apart. You felt the sting of betrayal in your bones. You vanished not to run, but to reclaim. You burned and let your old self die. You rebuilt not to fit in, but to stand sovereign. You loved again, but with sacred boundaries. You refused the world's masks and stayed bare-souled. You turned pain into prophecy and grief into gold. And now here you are, not broken, but reborn. Candle Scorpio is not just a sign, it's a soul path. You are not here to coast through life. You are here to transform, to dissolve the false, to burn through illusions, to hold others and yourself to the standard of soul-level truth. In astrology, Scorpio governs death, rebirth, power, secrets, shared soul contracts. But in spiritual terms, Scorpio governs the threshold between who you were and who you truly are. You don't just evolve. You initiate others by simply being who you are. Person in lotus position, Buddhist mirror. To know the self is to burn the false. In the teachings of the Buddha, we are called to awaken not through avoidance, but through seeing clearly. Scorpio answers that call in their bones. You don't lie to yourself anymore. You don't chase what doesn't resonate. You don't ignore the whisper of intuition, because you've suffered enough to understand. Pain is not punishment. It is purification. You don't heal to be lovable. You heal to become undeniably aligned. Scorpion, this is Scorpio power, quiet, relentless, divine. You don't shout. You shift. You don't perform. You perceive. You don't fight dirty. You walk away clean. Your vengeance is your vibration. Your silence is your sword. Your loyalty is your legacy. You were never here to be understood. You were here to awaken the sacred in a sleeping world. New moon and the world needs you, now more than ever. In a society addicted to masks, you are the mirror. In a culture obsessed with comfort, you are the crucible. In a generation numbing out, you are the fire that feels deeply and stays awake. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will earn your energy. But those who do, they'll never forget the depth you offered, or the light you became after burning. Man in lotus position, final reflection, the sovereign Scorpio path. You are no longer defined by pain. You are empowered by it. You are no longer giving yourself to what drains you. You are devoted to what aligns. And you are no longer scared of your darkness. You are ruled by it, with grace. Because Scorpio doesn't escape the underworld. They reign from within it. They don't rise in spite of their wounds. They rise through them. Direct hit comment below. Let's close this together. What part of this Scorpio journey resonated most with you? Fire, was it the betrayal? The alchemy? Scorpion, the silence? Red heart, the rebirth? Speech balloon, drop your story in the comments. Someone out there needs your truth. Candle, thank you for walking the path with us. If this series helped you reclaim your fire, sparkles like it. Speech balloon, share it. Bell and subscribe for more soul deep wisdom on Scorpio and spiritual transformation. This is not the end. It is the emergence of your sovereign self. Scorpio doesn't just survive. They ascend.